I'm Avery.
And I'm Mel.
This is the Veda Lounge Podcast.
All things Vedic, cosmic, and magic.
For yoga teachers, entrepreneurs, creatives, and coming back to your own center.
We explore themes on living like you practice to knowing your nature.
Join the conversation for an embodied homecoming to illuminate your radiance.
Through getting nerdy with Vedic sciences and self-discovery, cozy into your cosmic cadence. Hello, welcome back to the Veda Lounge Podcast. It's Mel here, and I am so excited to introduce a dear friend of mine to you guys. Her name is Sapna Fliedner, and she is... when we first met, it was like instant shared interest and like get coffee and connect. And I'm so excited to really have her here for you guys to hear this perspective on Ayurveda and ways to bring this home. Just a little background on Sapna. She is a certified integrative holistic health coach. She is formally trained as a family nurse practitioner from UCLA and NYU, and then received additional training from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, and then the Kerala Ayurveda Academy. She is a wife, a mom, researcher, and avid recipe modifier. She uses real food as medicine, and her passion is using real, whole, local organic foods to prevent and reverse disease with her kitchen pharmacy, and spelled F-A-R-M-A-C. Love that so much. She teaches her clients how to reverse and prevent disease using food as medicine, ancient Ayurvedic secrets, spiritual philosophy, functional nutrition, and a holistic lifestyle for disease prevention, longevity, and anti-aging. Sapna has traveled extensively throughout Asia and has studied various Eastern healing modalities like Ayurveda, pranic healing, and medicinal uses of spices and essential oils. And Sapna also seeks to find the root cause of illness rather than treating only the symptoms with a Band-Aid approach. Sapna believes that everything is energy and is a firm believer that not only is the food you eat important, it's how you eat, when you eat, and the thoughts you think that cause real dis-ease. She was the co-founder of Raising Sages Integrative Pediatrics, which was a functional integrative pediatric practice in Newport Beach, California. She works in private practice now, and she can be found at sapnafliedner.com, and her company is Spiritual Nutrition. And you guys, I will make sure that her information is in the notes of this episode, so definitely go check her out. So with all that being said, welcome, Sapna. Thank you for being here. And
well, thank you for having me. So yeah, I mean, just to like kind of toggle onto that, I'm the owner of Spiritual Nutrition. I help people reverse and prevent disease using food as medicine, Ayurveda, natural remedies, and a holistic lifestyle. And I named my company Spiritual Nutrition because I feel like we cannot rise and awaken to our true selves if we're in a sick body. I was the co-owner of Raising Sages Integrative Pediatrics. This was an integrative and functional medicine holistic pediatric practice in California, along with my husband, Dr. Dane Fliedner. We had this company for about 7 years, and I started in the medical field probably, I would say, about 28 years ago. I started off as a nurse in 1997, and then I became a nurse practitioner in 2002. And then I became an integrative health coach in 2012. Then we kind of traveled all over Asia, and I learned pranic healing in Sri Lanka and Thailand. And I became an Ayurvedic practitioner in Kerala, India in 2013. And yeah, that's kind of like what my background was, and how I got here is into this whole alternative field is while I was training as a family nurse practitioner, I worked as a home health nurse on the side. And I loved this way of working because I got to go into people's homes. I got to meet their families. I got to see how they really lived and how it affected their life. And I especially got to see what they ate. So that was really eye-opening to me because I had this one particular patient who I was seeing in the clinic as a nurse practitioner, and I was prescribing him blood pressure medications. And I had the same client at his house it's very rare to have the same client at home and that, because I was just doing this on the side as a job. And I went into his kitchen and he had like 10 to 20 cans of Campbell's soup cans just lined up on the wall. And each can, I kid you not, is 800 milligrams of sodium. And I'm in the clinic just prescribing, blood pressure medications. And I'm thinking, wow, that's when I realized that nutrition plays a major role in your health. It could heal you or slowly kill you. And if you can imagine, if every doctor had the chance to go into their patients' homes, I don't think we would need, all these medications in hospitals. So it was kind of interesting. And then fast forward 10 years later, I became a mother, and my kids were having some food allergies. And my youngest one, she had this like severe bloating and her stools were not formed. And so we took her all over to every doctor. This was going on from birth until age 6. We took her to all the best doctors in the world, I mean, in the country, I should say. And my husband said, well, let's go. We were living up in Dallas at the time. He said, let's go to the top children's hospital in Dallas. He goes, there's a guy there. He's got 30 years experience. He's a professor of GI. If he doesn't know what's wrong with her, then I don't know what to tell you, right? He's like, he's gonna know, right? So we went there, we made the appointment. It was like a 6-month waiting list. By this time, she's like 6, okay? And she still has the bloating and she still has unformed stools. And the doctor looks at her labs again, says the same thing, the same song and dance. Well, there's really nothing wrong with her. She looks normal, she's developing. And we were like, I was so mad because, like, when something's wrong with your kid, just intuitively. So finally, my husband said to me, he said, I know you love all that alternative medicine and natural woo-woo stuff. He'd always call that. This is before he got into it. And he said, okay, we can go to a naturopath, a naturopathic doctor. So we just went to a naturopathic doctor, no one special, just someone down the street. And she did a simple allergy test. And it was found that she was allergic to wheat. And so we took that out of her diet, and her gut, I kid you not, Melissa, was like her stomach was flat in 3 days and she had formed stools after 6 years of suffering. So I was so relieved, but I was like angry at the same time because I made all of their food from scratch, like organic foods from scratch, no processed foods, not even a goldfish cracker. So I thought, wow, I worked so hard to make these healthy meals, and they have all these food allergies, right? Because it wasn't wheat only, it was other things, but wheat was the main thing. So I literally just like cried for 3 days because I was like, what on earth, But I was happy, but I was relieved, but I was angry too. So I'm like, what am I gonna do? So I literally just finally, after about 3 days, I just kind of rolled up my sleeves and said, okay, God, tell me what to do. And that's when I started researching like crazy. That was like, I started learning about everything about health. And then I healed my other daughter of food allergies as well. She had this like, she would do this sniffle thing all the time. She had this congestion. And I healed her in 4 days with food. And so this really humbled my husband because of 6 years with all these top docs, couldn't help her, but a naturopath did. He thought, well, what were we missing as an MD and an NP, right? So that's why we opened Raising Sages Integrative Pediatrics, because we just didn't want anyone to suffer anymore. So that's when we started learning functional nutrition, functional medicine. My husband became certified in all of these things in holistic integrative practice. And we just started studying all this stuff. So we had this company from 2014 and 2021, and then we closed our practice in California, and then we moved to Texas. We just couldn't practice the way we wanted to practice anymore. I'm not going to get into all that right now, but I think the viewers know we just couldn't practice the way we wanted to practice. So then I recently restarted a new company called Spiritual Nutrition, where my main emphasis is to remove toxic foods and lifestyles so that we can awaken to our true selves. So I basically blend Ayurveda, functional nutrition, and spiritual energetics to bring about true health.
I love this so much, and I really appreciate you sharing because it's oftentimes these experiences that we have that hit us so close to home that completely shift and reorient how we're approaching things in the world, right? And I think
Yes.
one of the challenges in the West is that the food industry and the conversation on nutrition and food in general can be so daunting because there's so many externalized rules that we kind of disassociate our own bodies and our nature away from like the checklist of what to eat or the stuff that the government tells us to eat, and it can be so overwhelming for people out there. I know it is for me in a way. I mean, I've really gotten into, and this is more like trial and error and playing, but eating according to my astrological chart. So
Good.
that's a whole other, and I'm a complete student in it, but like eating the Aquarian way and the Taurus way, like it's so interesting. So I know there's so many paths, but it can be so overwhelming for a lot of people, right?
Oh, that sounds really interesting. You'll have to teach me about that.
It's very fascinating. And but honestly, all these sciences, like they are so closely woven. Because even let's just use the Aquarian way, and that's because in Western, because generally you know, you have your Jyotish chart, but in Western astrology, because that's like the avatar you, like it's the full, you know, it's your physicality. So I've been trialing more with my Western chart, but with Aquarius rising, you know, it's Aquarius is unique, it's unexpected, and it's playing with this unexpected, like the rhythm you have with your food. It's just not as organized as like potentially a Virgo diet would be. So it's just interesting, but it's very Ayurvedic at base, right? Like it's
Yeah, that sounds amazing. It's similar, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think one of the reasons, other than the fact that I love listening to people teach and talk about Ayurveda. I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner, but within yoga therapy and in our community, you know, we touch on these things from a yoga practice or you like pacifying the doshas, right? But as a wider branch of medicine or path, I think that it's so special and powerful for people to hear how this stuff all works. So if you were to define Ayurveda and kind of explain what Ayurveda is, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so the definition of Ayurveda is basically it's India's 5,000-year-old medical system. Okay, it's the oldest medical system in the world. Chinese medicine and Greek medicine are derived from it. And it's a complete holistic system that was taught by teachers to one generation to the next generation. They didn't have books in those days. It's just they taught their kids and their kids taught their kids and it just went down the generations. And it's based on the belief that health and wellness, they depend on this delicate balance between mind, body, and spirit. So Ayur means life and Vedas means knowledge or science. And so Ayurveda focuses on prevention by providing guidelines on daily and seasonal routines and diet. And basically, they say that everything in this universe is connected energetically, which I know you know. Good health is achieved when the mind and body and spirit are in harmony with the universe. And a disruption in this harmony leads to poor health and sickness. So it uses, non-toxic herbs and spices and daily rituals to bring balance back into the body. And these daily rituals, which we're going to talk about today, are the key to the prevention of illness. And it is the first known science in which preventative measures are given, and it's the mother of all medical sciences. And so its basic tenet is basically found on the principles of nature, like earth, space, air, wind, fire, and water. And so these elements, they combine to form the three forces or energies known in Sanskrit as the doshas, right? So you have the Vata dosha, which is governed by wind and air. You have the Pitta dosha, which is fire and water. And you have Kapha, which is earth, okay? And it's basically a personalized system rather than using a conventional across the board kind of approach to healing, okay? And so health exists when there is a balance of all of these three, and everyone inherits all of these three. but usually it's one dosha that's a little more dominant than the other ones. So the three main types, like I mentioned, so vata, it's basically typically the winter season and the late fall, and it's called the vata season as well. Okay. So we're in the vata season right now, and it's governed by air and space. So winter is cold and dry and windy. So you can visualize the vata person as having these same qualities of air and space and cold and dry and movement, right? Because their mind is moving, they're windy. And these people are generally like very thin built, they're light frames, they're skinny people. They have an aversion to cold weather. Um, their hands and their feet are always cold. They have dry skin. They have frizzy hair. They have irregular hunger and digestion. And they have difficulty gaining weight. Um, and they're prone to constipation because they're dry already, right? So, and because it's governed by the brain and the nervous system, the vatas tend to be the nervous types, the anxious types. They tend to get ADHD and insomnia. They're like the worry warts. But on the flip side, they're very creative people. They always get so many ideas, right? I'm a vata, so like the ideas just flow like all the time, and I have to like stay focused or I'll just go off on all these tangents. But they're very quick to grasp new information, but they're also quick to forget it as well. And their sleep is kind of light and interrupted sleep. So then we have the pitta, okay? So the pitta is reflected by the summer season. So think of it fire and water. So you imagine summer as heat, having its source the element of fire. And this is responsible for skin, liver, and digestion. It transforms food into nutrients. So these people have very high digestive fire. Their agnis, what we call it in Sanskrit, is very high. So they can digest food better than any other type. Their body type is a medium build. They're the athletic types, and they have an aversion to hot weather. They feel hot easily. They have warm hands and feet, and they typically overheat in summer. They perform activity with medium speed, and they prefer cold drinks and cold food. They have a very sharp digestion. They cannot skip meals. So these are my clients who cannot really do intermittent fasting that well. They have a medium memory and medium time to grasp new information. Now, when they're off of balance, they can be prone to anger and irritability. But their characters, they're very sharp people. They're very competitive. They have a very strong intellect. They make very good public speakers and leaders. And they're very determined.
Aren't they funny too? Like, isn't humor connected
Yes.
to Pitta? Yeah.
Yes, they are. They're very witty. They're very sharp. My husband's a Pitta. I'm a Kapha, so I can totally relate. The diseases that they get are skin rashes if they're out of balance, acne, loose bowel movements, poor eyesight, heartburn, ulcers, arthritis, allergies, rosacea, high blood pressure, all the inflammatory diseases. So then we have Kapha, the third dosha, which is a combination of earth and water, and it's reflected in the spring months. And these are nature's heavy and solid elements like wet and moist, and the spring is like the rainy season. So its principles are of structure and solidity, growth and lubrication, and just being stable. So these people have they're heavier build, they have greater strength and endurance, and they tend to be kind of heavy set or bigger boned people. They are very kind of slow and methodical in their activity. Their skin is oily, moist, and smooth, okay? Their hair is thick and wavy and plentiful. They're very peaceful people, very tranquil, steady personality, easygoing, very forgiving people. They are slow to grasp new information, but they're also slow to forget. They are slow to become excited or irritable. They're kind of even keel kind of people. Um, their sleep is very long and very heavy, and they dislike wet and cold temperatures. So you can see each type dislikes what they are, because in Ayurveda, balance is what brings you, the opposites bring balance. And some of the kapha diseases they get are, since they have more congestion and more mucus, they get asthma, bronchitis, coughs, and colds. So this is the type you don't want to give them a lot of dairy, ice cream, pizza, and all that stuff. That's not good for kapha types. So basically, the doshas, Melissa, it's basically more than just your body type. It's like a genetic code that's unique to you, and it influences how a person eats, how they sleep, how they spend money, how they exercise. So if you know your type, you can literally become your own dietitian, personal trainer, and psychologist all in one, you know. So I just love it because it's just a really nice blueprint that I think has just been lost. You know, like I know it because I come from India, but I wish this stuff was taught here because it's so important.
You know what's funny is I remember going and getting a massage at a spa, and they were like, pick one of the three oils. Do you want energizing? Do you want calming? Or do you want grounding, right? Or yeah, it was grounding, calming, and energizing. And I'm like, this is Ayurveda. And I feel like it's like threaded, underlain, and subtly, but a lot of people, because we've come from such a systematic one size fits all, the pressure and push for our society to be this one size fits all, and that has not worked. And as more people are advocating for themselves and their health, I think they're looking for stuff like this so they can use a lens to see themselves through, right? And I find for me, Ayurveda helps me, or the dosha specifically, it helps me understand, okay, if this is off. And it's funny because obviously I'm dealing with a little bit of congestion with the seasons changing, and my normal afternoon snack or lunchtime snack is cheese and crackers. Today I was like, not a chance, can't do cheese today, right? Like, and you learn little ways to bring it into your life. This is so beautiful. I'm curious, have you, because you can use this stuff with mental health, right? Like in the states of the mind as well. I think about also for counselors and therapists that this, a lot of times it kind of gets shoved into the nutrition world, but it actually branches and stretches into many modalities, right?
Exactly. Exactly. No, it's important for everything, body, mind, and spirit. So there's also, now that we know the individual doshas, there's also life cycles. And these are the three types of life cycles. So the early years in Ayurveda, from birth until age 12, I believe, is the kapha time. Okay. So the kids are in the spring cycle. So why is this? Because kapha season is wet and moist. And so in the mucus stage, so they can lubricate their joints as they grow. That's why it's moist, right? So just as the rain supports the growth of new leaves and grass and flowers, the mucus supports the elastic growth of children, right? Plants need a moist environment to grow and germinate. So children also require a moist medium for growth. So this is the reason why kids have more colds, because they're like in the kapha season where it's moist, right? So I'll give you an example. So I used to homeschool my kids. And so when my daughter was 5, we took her to this homeschool co-op on Fridays where the moms would bring their kids in. We'd all have fun and do things with the kids. And there was this one child, he was kind of a heavier set child. I knew he was a kapha, a very sweet boy, very forgiving, that kind of compassionate energy. And this child, I kid you not, from fall until spring, I never saw him without a cold. Like he had a runny nose the whole year. And when I would look at the lunchbox that he would have, and his mom would be packing cheese for him and like all this dairy and milk, and then, pizza. And then after class, she'd go, "Oh, honey, do you want to go get ice cream?" And this poor boy, I felt so bad for him because it was basically, she was just feeding him fuel for the fire. And it was just making it worse. And this poor boy just was like drowning in mucus. But he was a kapha kid. So what would happen if you gave that to a Vata child? A Vata child is dry. So who's going to recover faster from a cold? The Vata, because it's going to balance, the moist cheese and the dry Vata. They're going to recover faster than if the Kapha child who had a cold for like a year, you know. So it's really, really interesting.
I could see this being really helpful for parents, just assessing. And do you recommend, like, for parents to know what dosha? Because I know there's online quizzes, but is there something different for kids and how to observe kids through?
No, mostly it's through observation. And, funny, it's, Melissa, when I learned about my children, it was kind of by accident. Like, your kids and you know what their tendencies are. So my husband would tell me, like, when he was a kid, his mom would always like give him a jacket and say, go outside, it's cold outside, but make sure you have your jacket on. And he's like, I hated it. I just hated wearing a jacket. He's a pitta. So he's like a flaming hot Cheeto. Like he does not want a jacket. And so my kids, the same thing. I remember once we were driving and we were somewhere in the back, and then my youngest daughter was, I think, one and a half, and then my oldest one was like 4. And it was a beautiful 70-degree day. We had the windows down, and my oldest daughter, who is a Vata, had a sweater on. I had a sweater on because I'm a Vata, and I put a sweater on my youngest daughter because I thought it was kind of breezy and cold, 70 degrees. She started getting like her cheeks were bright red. And I thought, oh my God, maybe she has a fever. I don't know what's wrong with her. And so as soon as I got home, I pulled over actually because she was really, really hot. And I took off her sweater, I unbuckled her, her car seat, and then put the car seat back on, took out her sweater and just let her kind of like air out. We were 10 minutes from home. When we got home, she was perfectly fine. And I thought, huh, here I'm thinking, let's hurry up and get home. She has a fever. She was fine. So there were these little clues that I didn't know about Ayurveda back then. So one would always run hot, one would run cold. When I would tuck them in to sleep at night, I'd put them to sleep at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Before I'd go to bed at 10, I would kind of check on them again. I'd go into one girl's room and she had the sheets on top of her head. And I'd go into the other girl's room, who's the Pitta, and her sheets would be flying all over and her legs are, splayed out because she's hot. She runs hot and the other one runs cold. So just by observing your children, you can tell, if they're a thicker child, a mucusy child, a cold child, a hot child, and you'll know.
It's so true, though. Like, as you're sharing this, it's making me think of just observing even like behaviors, like if people or kids isolate versus like being really intense in like directing their friends. Like, there's got to be a lot of ways that you can connect those dots and see. So I think this is really useful for parents for knowing, like, well, what do we pack for lunch for our kids, or the type of snacks we allow our kids, or even how they respond to certain things, right?
Absolutely. If like my oldest one, like you were talking about the mental mind psychology, she's not a competitive person at all. She's kind of like, okay, they won, no problem. The other one, who's a Pitta, who's literally like, I gotta win, So it's really interesting. And so then after age 12 until about 50 to 60, so from 12 to about 50 to 60, we move into the Pitta time of life. So just as the summer is hot, in the active time of year, and that plants and animals are more active in the long days of summer, likewise, from our teenage years up until 50 to 60, we are in the active time of our lives. Okay, so we are ready to take on the world, right? We are raising our children, we're making our mark in society, and we just are in the time to get things done in life. And then from 60 onwards, we go into the Vata season of life, which is the last human cycle. It's over age 60. And so just think of it like in nature, winter is the time of dormancy, right? The animals hibernate, the trees lose their leaves, plants quietly just die back, and the roots and the seeds, they just kind of wait patiently for spring, right? It's a time of rest, right? So just as the leaves dry out, we dry out too, right? Our skin becomes dry, our joints kind of lose that lubrication, and because we're not in the kapha stage, our body becomes stiff. And, our body's winding down at this time, but our mind is still sharp. So as we age and we endure life stresses, our muscles grow tighter and the body becomes kind of stiffer and our flexibility kind of wanes. And so the ability of the blood supply to penetrate these compromised tissues it's really hard. So without adequate blood supply and lubrication for the muscles and joints and our organs, all of those features are lost now, right? So the tissues are now deprived of oxygen carried by the blood. And the decreased oxygen causes the body to kind of lay down this like scar tissue. And it kind of renders the body stiff and brittle and kind of rigid, hence the aging process.
It's interesting. I heard that there was they did research at a aging facility in India where they did Ibanga, right? Like the oil massages on their seniors with dementia, and that was a part of like what they showed help reverse or slow the process of dementia and neurocognitive illnesses or diseases like that. I don't know if you have any thoughts or anything about that.
Oh, yes, we're going to get into that.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, I love Abhyanga. So they say there's a beautiful quote, Melissa, and it says, it is more important to know what sort of person has a disease than to know what sort of disease a person has. And that was by Hippocrates. So for example, this child who was the kapha child, right? It's more important to know that he was a kapha than he had a cold or a bronchitis than the vata, right? Because we know how to heal each of them if we know what type of person they are, which I thought was really beautifully said. If we all went to the doctor and they went, well, are you a vata? Are you a kapha? Are you if they knew that, they'd know how to heal you. So just like there are the 3 life cycles and the 3 individual doshas, there's 3 types in the day, in the individual 24-hour cycle. And if you know these things, you will know how to eat and sleep and prevent disease. Yes, so early morning and evening time from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. This is the kapha time. Again, it's the slow time. There's more mucus. People get up in the morning, they have mucus in their throat, in their eyes, right? You have a very low digestive fire at this time. So eating a small meal at this time is very important, like fruit. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to digest. We're going to get into that a little bit later. For 10 o'clock, it's the pitta time from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., okay? This is the pitta time where it's increasing fire. And it's also 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. as well, okay? So 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Okay, so we're getting things done. You have high digestive fire. You eat your biggest meal of the day at this time. So it is best absorbed then as we have the most digestive enzymes at this time, when the sun is high in the sky. Okay, so basically Dinacharya is like which we'll get to, it basically it means follow the day. So in the morning, the sun is low. In the afternoon, the sun is high. In the evening, the sun is low again. So you're following the day. So you have the highest digestive enzymes between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So I eat my first meal between 11 a.m. and 1. So yeah, because you're going to digest it really, really well. And also they say in Ayurveda is to get to bed before 10 because the brain detoxes at this time. In fact, I have this Ayurvedic practitioner friend, and she would always call it double coupon hours because we get more bang for our buck if you sleep before 12. Like, you don't go to bed that late. Like, those few hours are very, very important because if you stay up past 10, it's now going into the pitta time. Okay. So this is when people say, oh, I got a second wind. Well, it's really just nature. That's, you're going into a different body type. So they say to go to sleep in the kapha time. So, and then the vata time is late afternoon, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and then 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So this is the qualities of movement and creativity and inspiration at this time. So yeah, so then basically the most important thing I think I want to tell you is Ayurveda places a huge amount of importance on Dinacharya. which literally translates to daily rituals or follow the day. So it's not a singular thing, but it's a cumulative effect of rituals that set you up for the greatest health that you can ever have in life. So if we want to create health in our life, we are the cumulative effect of all of what we do every single day, the daily little things, right? So it teaches that doing certain tasks at certain times can improve your well-being. So it allows you to connect with nature. It's basically nature's biohacking. Okay. So we don't need all these like red light machines, cold plunges, and these expensive biohacking machines when we don't even do the most simple things in life, and they're from nature and they're free. So when people come to me like, oh, I'm doing all this cold plunge and I'm doing all these things, and I'm like, and they're like, it's not working for me. I'm like, if you're a Vata person, what's going to happen if you do a cold plunge? Like this person cannot handle cold, and it's going to make their nervous system go crazy, and they're going to just have very high cortisol, right? Now, the Pitta person, who's like the hot person, may enjoy the cold plunge, right? So I just think that our bodies have become weak also because we don't follow nature. We're just always looking for that next, the next greatest thing. We're sitting in our homes and it's 72 degrees year round. Our air conditioner, heat, people don't want to sweat. People don't want to be cold. Like when we're cold, those goosebumps are strengthening our nervous system. When we're hot and that sweat, it's strengthening our nervous system. Like our body is working. It knows what to do but if you're constantly like comfortable artificially, then our bodies become very weak.
Such an interesting concept. I've never heard that, but it makes so much sense because if we're not using the adaptability within, and this probably translates why we may struggle with resilience or adaptability in our life too, right?
Exactly. Because we want everything so easy. And that's, in the olden days, it wasn't like that, right? One of my Ayurvedic teachers, he said way back in the olden days with kings and queens, like a king that would be a Pitta would marry a Vata wife because she was like air conditioning for him. So it was really interesting to hear because they didn't have air conditioning and heat back then. So basically, the first thing in Dinacharya is you rise early in the morning, preferably before sunrise, because you want to awaken the Vata time when you're creative, right? They say that 1.5 hours before sunrise is called the Brahma Muhurta time. Okay, this in Sanskrit means it's like the auspicious time. Okay, it's a time for meditation, for yoga, and for any kind of worship or spiritual practices. And they said that if you practice this in this time of the morning, they're said to have a greater effect than any other part of the day. It's a very powerful time of day. They say that the veil between this life and the other side is very thin at this time. So it's a very beautiful time. So all you have to do is like look up where you live, the sunrise. Like if the sun rises right now here in Austin at 7, you would just count back an hour and a half and your time would be 5:30 in the morning. If it rises at 6, you need 4:30 in the morning. And you can feel the energy, right? If you wake up that earlier, you
For
feel
sure.
it. Yeah.
I actually love with waking up early, I love to work on creative projects at that time in the morning. And most of the time, that's like how our schedule works because my husband leaves for work so early. So we wake up around 5:30 or 5:15 in the morning. And then I feel so grounded until the sun rises. Then that's when I take my daughter to school. Like it works so perfect. But I remember, and I have compassion because there was seasons in my life where it wasn't so natural for me to get up that early to create or to be in meditation. I would fall asleep. I would struggle. But adjusting that with the time when to go to bed definitely, I mean, it's kind of common sense, but it makes it a little bit easier, like to adapt our routines to these cycles for sure.
Absolutely. So then the next thing you do is you want to do oral care. So you brush your teeth and you tongue scrape. So you use a copper scraper, and this basically starts the process of digestion. It removes the toxins that are built up overnight on the tongue. And it basically is telling the body, hey, food's going to come soon. You know, something's going to come in because you're no longer fasting because you just woke up. You've been asleep for 8 hours, right? So it's basically these are nature's digestive enzymes, right? You're just tongue scraping, right? Just nature. You don't need any fancy pills, right? And then after that, what you want to do is you want to oil pull with, and I do this with coconut oil. And they say around 20 minutes. I do about 10 minutes. Um, and then you spit it out because you don't want to swallow it because it has a lot of bacteria in it. What it does is it pulls out all the bacteria from your mouth. And then I actually put a little drop of clove oil in it, and which is antibacterial. And you can literally reverse a cavity this way. I've done it before. Like I could feel if something, you know, there's a cavity forming and it's kind of tender to air. I'm like, okay, I haven't been doing my oil pulling. I'll just oil pull. I'll put a drop of clove in. That cavity's gone. I mean, I'm sure dentists don't want to hear that,
No,
but it works.
here's the thing is that because, and I always invite people like starting, sometimes we just start like, what is one little thing? And I always talk about oil pulling because I believe it's changed my life. That's actually one consistent thing. For as inconsistent as I am, the one consistent thing is oil pulling and doing that. And I generally, and by the way, as I say this, like I just kind of do my very vata, like an inconsistent way of living. But sometimes it's in the mornings or I do it before bed. But, or if at any point, if I feel almost like not good, like I'm gonna get sick or something, that is huge. But I will say when I go to the dentist, they can't believe that it's like, I mean, the whiteness, my teeth whiteness, my teeth are strong. I swear
Yes.
by oil pulling, but I'm writing down clove oil because that is interesting. I have not heard that. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, it makes your teeth white as well. I mean, it's amazing. I've seen people remineralize their teeth with coconut oil. Like if your teeth are kind of thin and you can see through them, like they just oil pull and it starts to become stronger and thicker. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
My daughter does it with me, and that was a huge piece. Not to go into a long story, but as young parents, we just didn't know what we didn't know, and the apple juice she was drinking was rotting her teeth, and of course, the dentists were very quick to like, well, we need to do all this invasive, the caps and all of that. And this was actually a big experience that, talk about experiences that change us, right? When we were getting, again, she was like 2 years old, right? So they're doing the surgery, but they kept adding, or like the procedure, but they kept adding more and more. And we had to tell them to stop, that we're done. Like, because they kept adding to our bill. It was the craziest experience. And so that led me into a place where and just so much guilt and mom guilt and just trying to understand how to help her teeth. And when she finally got to about age 4 or 5, that was something because the caps kind of came off. It's just so dumb. This is a whole thing, but anyways, the caps were coming off, so the teeth were exposed until her baby teeth fell out. We just had to kind of deal with those, but I would start getting her to oil pull with me, and any of the pain, like when she would have pain or complain, that would get rid of the pain. And her teeth, if now she's, going to be 9 next year. I mean, you wouldn't even know, but we do it almost every day. Well, she does it almost every day, but it's a fun thing we do together. And that's, getting her
That's a
excited
beautiful,
about it. Yeah.
that's a beautiful story. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'll have to use that. That's amazing. That's truly amazing. Yeah, no, it's a great thing to do. I love it, you know.
Yeah, and you know how with kids too, you can be silly with them. I mean, it's a silly thing. We have fun to do. We do together. We walk around and we are like, like it's fun. So, and that's one
Yeah,
thing like I find with families is like how we can bring some of these things in. How do we make it
yeah,
playful and sweet
right,
together? Yeah.
right. And then I forgot to mention, make sure that you dump it out in the garbage, not in the sink, because it'll clog the sink.
Yep. Learn that. Not in the shower. Don't do it in your shower.
Don't do in your shower. Well, it's funny because sometimes, like I do as a vata, like I want to do all these things, but I kind of blend them together because we don't always have the time, right? So I'll go for a walk and I'll have oil in my mouth and I'm thinking, okay, I hope we don't see a neighbor right now because I'd be like, and if a neighbor says hello. So then I stopped doing that because they probably thought I was very strange.
That is such a good idea, though, to do it for your walks. I love
Yeah, because you can't do everything separately, right? You've got stuff to do. So then the next thing, every single day, hot water with lemon in the morning. I drink 1 to 2 glasses. This basically helps to hydrate the body and flush the toxins out from the night. Um, and since it's the Vata time, if someone has difficulty defecating, it also helps with that. So the first thing you want to do is, because we detox when we sleep. So this water just literally hydrates the body and pushes it out faster. All right, so what do people do now? They drink coffee in the morning, all these things they do, iced coffee, and don't get me started on ice. But they put the wrong things, dark fluid into the kidneys that are trying to get rid of waste from overnight. It's like black soot, right? Just getting, and that is probably one of the worst things you can do for your body. So hot water and lemon. If you're pitta, do warm because they're going to be like, hot? I have to do something that's hot. So warm for pitta, hot for vata, and just, drink that first thing in the morning. And then the next thing would be to eliminate your bowels. It ensures regularity. I mean, some of these things, Melissa, they just sound like common sense, but you would be surprised how many people don't do these things. They say a healthy body has a bowel movement 5 to 10 minutes after waking. I remember once I was watching the Dr. Oz show, and Dr. Oz went into the audience, and he asked his viewers, how many times a day, or how often do you poop? And I was so shocked because the average person was once a week. And one lady was once every 2 weeks. And I literally was sitting on the sofa and I almost fell off the sofa because I was like, wow. And they were just kind of laughing, ha ha ha. I'm like, do you know that this is just basic prevention? Like this is going to set you up for colon cancer, right? If you don't take the garbage out in your house, what is your house going to smell like? It's going to stink. Likewise, you too are going to stink, And I had this client once and she had severe acne. And I said, oh, are you constipated? And she looked at me like, how do you know that? I said, well, the toxins are trying to come out of your skin, right? And people, these are little signs, it's like the red lights on in the dashboard of our car, right? And we're not listening. We just keep, doing the same things. So yeah, bowel movement, very important every day, about 10 minutes after waking.
I love the concept too. I heard once is that when we have a bowel movement, it's a process of letting go of yesterday and the energy of yesterday, so it helps more spaciousness and abundance for that day we're in. And I think of course people listening might giggle at this, but bowel movements can be a spiritual practice. And so when we use the bathroom, like when you pee and you're cleansing the body, like saying thank you, and let it become like, we've made it so weird in our society, which is it's weird that we've made it weird, but it
Right.
can be a spiritual practice of like
Absolutely.
letting go. And I would say if they're pooping once a week or every other week, you probably should go to it. That's a health issue, right? That's
Oh, totally.
yeah.
Totally a health issue. I literally do these affirmations every morning too. This is not part of the Dinacharya thing, but I always say thank you every single morning for every little thing. Like, and they're silly things like I open the tap, thank you for hot water. I'm brushing my teeth, thank you for this toothbrush. And then I touch my organs and I say thank you for my bowels. When I'm like literally saying thank you for my heart, thank you for my liver, thank you for my bowels, thank you that they're working properly, because so many people it's not working properly, right? And you're just like, I'm so grateful for my health because this is a vessel, Melissa. This is a temple that if you don't respect it, like God gave you this so that you could know your higher self, your truth, and know why you're supposed to be here on the planet. If you're in a sick body all the time, how are you gonna listen to the call?
It's the density, and that's the thing, is that it blocks us. And I think so many people have gotten so careless around like we use the body, we abuse the body to get to point B or whatever we're trying to achieve, versus learning how to befriend it and collaborate with it, because it's the vehicle for our expression. So yeah, absolutely.
There's a beautiful quote that says, "A healthy man has 1,000 wishes, but a sick man only one."
Ooh.
Right?
Oh my
So I
gosh.
always remember that, because when you're sick, all you want to do is be better. That's it. If I gave you $10 million right now but you're dying of cancer, you can't use it. What's the purpose of life, right? Without health is your true wealth. There basically, so after you have the bowel movement, okay, so you had the bowel movement, okay, you've taken out the garbage. So then the most important thing is every single day I do Abhyanga. Okay, Abhyanga is oil massage. And this is nervous system calming to the most extreme, especially for a Vata person. This is the most beneficial thing you can do. It's stress reducing, it helps with the lymphatic drainage. And there's basically two oils that I use. It's either sesame oil or coconut oil. Sesame oil is good for Vatas because it's warming. Coconut oil is good for Pittas because it's cooling. And you start with your head. You start up here on your head and you go from head to toe. Now, I don't do the head every day because I just don't want to walk around with greasy hair unless I'm washing my hair that day. But basically, it's kind of like this. It's like friction. You're just going to it's not like a Swedish massage. You're just going to take the oil and you're going to rub back and forth, like you're bringing friction and the lymphatic, you're bringing blood back into the organs. And so that is huge. You will feel a difference. And I mean, I've gone for massages where I've had, had them put oil on me, and they'll say stuff like, okay, well, they'll get the hot towels out to wipe it off, right? I'm like, no, 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 just leave it on, because in an hour and a half, that's all going to be absorbed into my body, because I know I'm Vata, right? I know I'm dry. So it's going to feel really, really good. Now, a Kapha person, that oil is going to sit on their skin for hours because they're already moist, right? So, so Vata, the Abhyanga is extremely, extremely important. I know you had a question earlier on Abhyanga.
Yeah, with dementia and like healthy aging, because they were doing research and apparently it helped reverse or slow down the progression of these neurocognitive diseases.
Absolutely, because it's nervous system calming, right? So it's pretty amazing. It's really amazing. And people in the Vata stage of life over the age of 60, it's also very important because I told you their tissues are getting rigid, right? They're becoming stiffer. So what happens when the door of your house is creaking? What do?
Oil on
We we oil it, right? So same thing. We oil our joints, right? And you can feel them stop clicking. So it's just
do it anyways.
very natural.
So easy. It's such an easy thing to do. Even like as you're sitting at your desk, like, or, just like even starting with just your joints, if you can't do like a full thing, like
Right.
starting simple. I was going through a period of time to help pacify a Vata imbalance I was dealing with last year. And one thing I did every morning was because I put sesame oil and frankincense. I can't remember why I used frankincense in there, but for some reason. And anti-inflammation probably. Anyways, I bought it off of Amazon, just a little pump, and I had it on my nightstand. Pumped before I got out of bed, and did a foot massage on myself before I stepped out of bed.
I
And
love
that
it.
was, yeah, because I think too, it's like, how do we make it convenient, and how do you just simple start? Like the pump next to my bed was perfect. That was very easy.
Yeah, I put a little thing of coconut oil right next to my bed. And I'm going to tell you something for those of you who have problems going to sleep. If you rub your whole foot with coconut oil, like the toes, all of because it's like an acupuncture, it's the meridians, right? Your feet have the meridians for the whole body, right? If you just give yourself a little foot massage for a couple of minutes, you will sleep like a baby, because So my mom was doing this funny thing. She goes, "Oh, I don't have any sleep problems, but I give myself a, oil foot massage." And I thought, okay, let me see. I'm gonna, practice this, right? So I did it, and the next day I slept like I was out. I don't think I woke up once. And I'm postmenopausal. So for those of you menopausal women out there, your sleep is light. And I thought, wow. So I looked it up. I said, well, what's going on here? I got to know the science behind this. And basically, it said that since your feet have the meridians of the whole body, it's connected to the nervous system. Like you literally lubricate all of your joints, all of your organs from head to toe by just rubbing your feet. And I was like, wow, what a simple thing. We don't need supplements, right? Just simple things. So it's pretty amazing. So then after that, you want to do some physical activity, okay? Because that's very good for your hormones. It's good for your blood sugar. It balances your metabolism. It's good for fat burning. It basically brings energy to your body for the whole day, right? So yoga is good. Walking in the morning, that's something that I do every morning. Now, each different dosha has different types of exercise. So like the kapha person needs heavy exercise. The pitta person needs medium exercise, and the vata person needs light exercise. So just like their builds, right? So the pitta person enjoys competitive sports because remember, they're like competitive people. So that they need to be challenged. They get bored quickly. So tennis, cycling, sprinting, and to balance out their natural energy, pittas can also try like cooling sports like swimming and surfing and river rafting and kayaking, that kind of stuff. And then the kapha person, they need very fast-paced aerobic activities that produce sweat. Okay, they need team sports because it gives them motivation. Because kapha types can tend to be kind of on the lazy side, more prone to laziness or lethargy. Um, and long distance walking or running is a really good option for kapha types who excel in endurance sports because they're thick, heavy set. They can go the long way, right? So I'll tell you a funny story. So they were really good with yoga. I'm not yoga, Zumba and cardio exercises. And then Vata, again, very light ones, yoga, walking, Tai Chi, Pilates. So a funny story was one day, so this is when we blindly follow exercises. They say, do this, it's really good for the body, right? So I went for a Zumba class and I like music and I like dancing. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for a Zumba class. And Zumba, if you've ever gone to it, it's fast-paced movement, right? It's like you're dancing and it's very fast. These women are going back and forth, left and right. And I literally, after half an hour in the class, I got an earache. And I thought, this is kind of weird because there was so much wind in there. And what are vatas? Wind. We are air. We are movement. We move when we're standing still, literally. So I was just doing the wrong exercise for my body type. I still went after that because I love music and dancing. I just kind of calmed it down a little bit and hung out in the back. But I wouldn't think you would get an earache from that, because there was just so much wind going back and forth. Or they say like do paleo CrossFit. Well, a vata person cannot do that, right? In their thin frame, but it's perfect for a kapha person.
In high school, I would get, I had a lot of inflammation, and so it was weight gain, and being Vata, like my birth constitution being Vata, I didn't know, obviously in high school I didn't know this, but I would go to run the treadmill, and I would do that intensely, but I felt like I was never losing weight. I felt like my inflammation would actually get worse. But I did that through high school, and it wasn't until I started doing yoga regularly towards the end of high school, I started to see my body change. And with about 2 years of doing yoga, like my body is a completely different body than I had in high school, where it was
Wow.
very swollen. Yeah, and I do attribute, because I was athletic. I played year-round soccer, but I did a lot of treadmill running and running. But when I stopped doing that slowly into like immersing into my yoga, that's when my body changed.
Running can cause a lot of inflammation in people. People don't realize it's actually really bad for the knees. So then in the morning, what you want to do is you want to have a very light breakfast if you are hungry. Vata people tend to have irregular hunger. But if you're a pitta person, basically light fruit, okay? Then the pitta time starts from 10 to 2, right? We have our heaviest meal, like I said earlier, between 12 and 1 in the daytime when the sun is high for maximum nutrient absorption. So we have the highest enzymes at this time, so we digest food the best at this time. So then you do your important tasks until 2. You're in the fire, you're driven, right? You get things done. And then in the evening routine, 6 p.m., you want to eat a light dinner, right? Because the sun's going down, so you have lower enzymes, right? You never want to eat after sunset in the dark because we don't have any enzymes then. And I know people who ate the same meal that in the afternoon that they ate in the evening that gave them gas and bloating, but didn't have any problems in the afternoon, just because they ate it at a different time. So I always tell my patients to, if you want to have a body like heaven, eat before 7. If you eat after 8, you gain weight. So it's a simple thing to remember. And then don't eat 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, right? Because or you're going to have horrible sleep and your body's going to age tremendously because now your body has to detox, right? From all the food. I mean, it has to digest from all the food that you just put into it. And it's supposed to detox, right? So now it's digesting, has to put that to the side and say, okay, now I got to digest the food that she just put in the body, right? So it ages you even faster. And then after that, the next thing you do is like dim your lights, no computers, no TVs, no phones, no blue lights. Read books in the evening and play games. Something very, relaxing, right? And then you sleep in the kapha time. And when the kapha dosha is between 9 and 10. Otherwise, if you go to bed after 10, you start to get that second wind again because you're going into the pitta time. So that's basically Dinacharya in a nutshell and all of Ayurveda. But I think really the most important thing, Melissa, I think is like having mindful eating practices. They call it ahara. It's really important in Ayurveda to eat whole foods, fresh foods, avoid processed foods, no packaged foods, canned foods, frozen foods, no leftovers, right? Because this is really horrible for the body. And to also practice gratitude for it. Thank God for the food that you have every day. And eat according to one's dosha, right? Your constitution. So I once had this client, she was a lawyer and she was a Vata person, okay? So you can already tell who she is. She's a mind person, she's a thin-framed woman. And she came to me and she said, I don't feel well. I just went to my dentist and I have a ton of cavities. And he asked, what did I do? And she basically was following a famous blogger online that said to drink a quart of green smoothies every day, right? And she literally, I said, can you focus? And she said, no. How did you know that? And I said, because you're literally eating very light food. I explained to her the concept of Ayurveda. You're eating very light food and it's cold food and you are cold and you are dry and you are Vata, you're a thin frame. So I changed up her diet a little bit and added like khichdi into her diet, some warming foods, and added some fat into her body. And she literally came back a month later. She said, I feel like a new person. Just with that simple thing. But this is what we don't want to follow blindly what we read on the internet. Now that I'm not saying that raw foods are not good for you. Raw foods are amazing for you. I think they're one of the most thing that's lacking in people's diet today is eating fresh fruits and vegetables. But she just went a little overboard with it, right? Now, if she was a pitta person, she'd be fine because that person is so hot. Those cold, cool foods would have been balancing for them. And then another thing, this was many, many years ago before I started to learn about all this. I remember I heard smoothies are really good for you, right? Which they are. And it was December, it was in Dallas and it was snowing, okay? And I went into my bedroom and I shut the door and I turned the heat on. I put on this big fuzzy robe and I drank this smoothie because I didn't have the desire to eat the smoothie because it was cold and it was cold outside and it was the winter time. My body was just telling me, hey, don't take that. But I tried to like biohack it and like turn on the heat and make myself warm. And that was the only way I could tolerate it. It's like, so we're not listening to our bodies. What I was drinking in the smoothies, it's not even growing seasonally in the winter time. So your body's telling you, we're just not listening.
I always tell
So
people because I think the question of like, well, how do we listen? Is it a sense thing? Is it a mental thing? And in some cases, it's an awareness, and then you trial error it. But your body will like lean in or like repel. Like if you think
yes.
about, like the idea if what for pitta people, and I even think about in the summer, like with watermelon, for example. Like, do I go like this or do I go like paying attention to when we feel drawn in and then repel, because this goes into the energy component too, that our bodies are responding to the biofrequencies of everything that's around us, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. So yeah, so just in a nutshell, the vata needs oily foods, warm foods, stews and curries, hot teas. The pitta needs cooling foods like fresh juices, smoothies, salads. And then the kapha person, since they're moist, they need dry foods that are warm, light, dry, and spiced food, because the spice kind of gives them kind of a kick in the pants to get up and go and do something. And cooked vegetables, leafy greens like radishes and parsley, and just a small amount of grains like quinoa and buckwheat, just a small amount. But that's basically Ayurveda in a nutshell.
I love this so much. Do you have any, like, if for yoga teachers who are out there who want to get more into this, or thoughts about applying this to yoga? I don't know, just kind of in a nutshell, that if you could share anything for the yoga teachers.
Well, yes. I mean, you could literally, I mean, you could teach this to your students, basically, because I think yoga and Ayurveda, they go together. They're sister sciences, right? So I even have a class where I teach yoga for Ayurveda for parents, right? So it's basically the same thing though, Melissa. It's whether you're a yoga teacher or you're not. It's basically if you teach your students yoga and you teach them Ayurveda, they go together, because you can't have that person in the class who you tell them to like meditate or do a pose and they have arthritis because they're eating the wrong foods because they don't know their dosha, right? So I mean it all goes together, but there's nothing like separate that you would tell a yoga teacher to tell their students. But yeah, it's just basic, yoga, I mean basic Ayurveda.
It is also threaded. I mean, like Jyotish, Vastu, Ayurveda, yoga, they all share the language. And I always think for people who are new to this stuff, think about yoga as for the mind, where
Yeah.
the Ayurveda is for the body, Jyotish for the soul, Vastu for our environments, and like
Yeah.
kind of playing. And I think a lot of this stuff is trial error. And I know a lot of people ask, like are searching for Ayurvedic practitioners and like how to get started. If someone wanted a session with you or wanted to work with you, how can they find you, and what does a typical session look like?
Yeah, no, you can find me at my website, sapnafliedner.com. And I have Ayurvedic consults. I actually have a course that basically tells you how to remove all the toxic foods in your life and what foods to bring in. So I do courses, I do classes, I do a lot of workshops. So you can find all that on my website.
Awesome. And do you do online and in person?
Both, both. I do the classes in person and then I do online one-on-ones.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking this time today. I mean, it is such a rich episode. I feel like there's so much value in there, and I just really appreciate that so much. For those listening, Sapna is a library of wisdom. So please go check out her website, go check out her work, and Ayurveda itself is so nourishing. There's so many ways to get started, and I hope that this brought value to everybody here who was listening. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.